"If I sing well, will you give me a plate of food?" said a black street girl at a talent show. The crowd laughed at first. A tiny, barefoot girl asking for food on a huge stage? But the moment she opened her mouth, the room froze. Her voice was pure magic, raw, emotional, and powerful beyond belief. Judges couldn't move. The audience couldn't stop crying. And what happened next turned a hungry street girl into a star overnight. The auditorium was buzzing with excitement. Contestants from across the city had lined up to show their talents. Dancers twirling in sparkling costumes, singers warming up with scales, and even magicians practicing last-minute tricks behind the curtains. The air smelled faintly of popcorn and stage lights, and the chatter of the crowd mixed with the occasional laughter of parents encouraging their children. Everyone's eyes were glued to the stage, waiting for the next performance to begin, hoping to see something unforgettable. But no one could have predicted what was about to unfold. From the back of the room, a small, frail figure appeared, slowly making her way toward the stage. She was barely 12, with a height that made her seem even smaller under the bright stage lights. Her clothes were tattered, frayed at the edges, and stained with dirt from the streets. The shoes on her feet had gaping holes, revealing toes that had walked miles on concrete and gravel. In her hands, she clutched a cracked, worn notebook, its pages yellowed and curling at the edges. Her hair, uncombed and knotted, fell around her face, partially hiding the determination in her dark, bright eyes. The audience murmured in surprise. Whispers spread like wildfire. Who is this girl? Did she even register for the competition? Why is she here? Some looked at her with pity, others with suspicion. The host, standing in the center of the stage, tried to hide his confusion behind a forced smile. He had seen all kinds of contestants, but none quite like this. A tiny street girl, seemingly lost in a world of polished performers. Trying to keep the energy light, the host chuckled nervously and leaned toward her, asking, "So, what's your talent, little one?" His voice carried a mix of curiosity and skepticism, as though he wasn't sure whether to take her seriously or politely ask her to leave. The girl lifted her head, looked him straight in the eye, and with a calmness that belied her trembling hands, said softly but with boldness, "If I sing well, will you give me a plate of food?" A heavy silence fell over the auditorium. For a moment, the noise of rustling programs, shifting chairs, and whispered conversations simply vanished. People exchanged puzzled glances. Some snickered nervously, unsure if they had heard correctly. Others shifted uncomfortably in their seats, embarrassed by the bluntness of her request. Even the judges, who were used to seeing confident and rehearsed performers, were caught off guard. There was something raw, honest, and unexpected in that single sentence, a plea that was both simple and profound. The girl didn't flinch. She stood straight, despite the obvious fear in her eyes. Her voice, though soft, carried a weight that seemed to reach every corner of the room. It was not arrogance, nor desperation alone, but a quiet confidence that demanded attention. The tiniest of movements, the tightening of her grip on the notebook, the slight lift of her chin, spoke volumes about her courage and determination. It was as if she had faced hardships far greater than the audience could imagine. And yet, here she was, daring to step into a world that had never shown her kindness. People couldn't look away. Some children in the front row clutched their parents' hands tightly, sensing the girl's vulnerability and bravery at the same time. Elderly audience members leaned forward in their seats, intrigued by this unexpected twist in the talent show. Even the security guards paused, unsure of whether to intervene or simply watch what was about to happen. The energy in the room had shifted. The usual excitement and competitive tension were replaced by curiosity, a quiet anticipation, and a subtle sense of empathy that no one could ignore. As the girl waited for a response, the host cleared his throat, struggling to find words. He glanced at the judges, who were scribbling notes furiously, unsure how to rate such an unusual introduction. The audience, still silent, felt a collective tension, the kind that comes just before something extraordinary unfolds. It wasn't just a girl asking for food. It was a moment suspended in time, where the world seemed to pause, holding its breath, waiting to see what courage, talent, and heart could truly look like. She stepped up to the microphone, her small frame trembling under the bright stage lights. The audience had been buzzing moments ago, but now a hush fell over the room, almost as if everyone instinctively knew something extraordinary was about to happen. Her hands shook visibly as she held onto the stand, her knuckles white. She swallowed hard, the motion small but telling, and took a deep, quiet breath, as if summoning not just her courage but every ounce of hope she had ever carried. Then she opened her mouth, and out came the first note, soft, almost fragile, yet unmistakably powerful. It floated through the air like a whisper of truth, delicate but impossible to ignore. Her voice wove a melody that was at once haunting and beautiful, a rare combination that left the audience completely still. There was no need for theatrics, no flashy lights, no backup singers or instruments, just a single, raw voice carrying a story that demanded to be heard. Every note she sang seemed to carry the weight of 1,000 lonely nights, cold nights spent on the streets with an empty stomach, and countless moments when the world seemed to have turned its back on her. Her song was simple, almost childlike, but the emotions behind it were profoundly complex. It was about dreams too big for her circumstances, about hope that refused to fade even in the face of hunger, and about the silent courage it takes to survive when the world ignores you. Each word she sang was soaked with pain, but also with resilience, and it pierced straight into the hearts of everyone listening. People in the front row had their hands over their mouths, trying not to cry openly. Some were wiping away tears that they hadn't expected to shed. Even the toughest audience members, those who had seen countless talent shows, couldn't help but be moved. Judges leaned forward in their seats, pens forgotten, eyes wide as if they had forgotten they were even there to judge. There was a sense of suspended time, the kind of silence where every heartbeat is audible, where every person in the room felt the same thing. Awe. The little girl didn't just sing. She painted a picture with her voice. You could almost see the cold streets she had walked, feel the hunger that had gnawed at her tiny stomach, and sense the longing for something better, something brighter. Her melody told a story of survival and courage, of dreams that refused to die even when circumstances were cruel. There were no words to describe the power of her performance. It wasn't about technical skill alone. It was about honesty, about the soul behind the song. As she reached the final notes, her voice soared, trembling yet unwavering, carrying the full weight of her life's struggles and hopes. The room was completely silent for a heartbeat after the last note faded, as if the audience collectively held their breath, unwilling to break the spell. Then, slowly, applause began to ripple through the auditorium. At first, it was hesitant, soft, but it grew into something unstoppable, a wave of emotion, respect, and admiration. People weren't cheering for a perfect performance. They were cheering for courage, for heart, for the extraordinary bravery of a small girl who had nothing but her voice and her dream. Some people were crying openly now, strangers turning to strangers to share the quiet understanding that had filled the room. Even the judges, usually composed and analytical, wiped tears from their eyes. The applause continued, swelling and echoing off the walls, as if the building itself was honoring her. In that moment, she was more than a contestant. She was a symbol of hope, resilience, and the undeniable power of human spirit. The little girl stepped back from the microphone, a shy smile crossing her face as she realized what she had done. For the first time, she felt seen, heard, and valued. The audience's energy washed over her, not as judgment, not as pity, but as pure respect. She had nothing but her courage, her raw talent, and a small notebook of dreams. And in those few minutes, she had captivated the hearts of everyone in the room. After the song ended, the auditorium seemed to hold its breath for a moment, as if no one quite knew how to process what had just happened. The host, who had been expecting the usual polite applause and the occasional polite smile from the audience, stepped back in sheer disbelief. His hand trembled slightly as he adjusted the microphone, and he cleared his throat, struggling to find words that could match the weight of the moment. That was incredible, he said, his voice almost breaking. And yes, little one, we will give you food. At that, volunteers from backstage rushed forward carrying plates of hot, steaming meals. The aroma alone made mouths water, but the girl barely noticed the smell. Her eyes, wide and shining, were fixed on the plates. She reached out and took one, holding it against her chest, as if it were the most precious treasure in the world. For a child who had spent countless nights with an empty stomach, this simple plate of food meant more than words could describe. It was warmth, it was care, it was a tiny taste of dignity she had rarely experienced. But what happened next was something no one in the audience could have predicted. Instead of hurrying away to eat in private, the little girl looked up at the crowd, her eyes scanning the faces of strangers. Her voice, still trembling slightly from the performance, rang out clearly. "I have enough for everyone who is hungry. Please take some." The audience froze, shocked. Whispers spread like wildfire. Did she just say that? She's giving it away. A street girl, sharing food. The room was filled with a mix of surprise, admiration, and a sense of awe that could almost be touched. People who had been strangers just moments ago felt an invisible connection to this small, generous soul standing in front of them. Volunteers hesitated, unsure if they should step in, but the girl simply gestured toward the plates. Slowly, others began to move forward. People who were hungry, who had perhaps been hoping to sneak a small snack, were now receiving it with smiles and gratitude. The girl's small hands helped guide the plates gently, ensuring everyone who needed food could take some. She moved with a grace and purpose that belied her age, showing kindness that seemed almost impossible for someone who had known so much hardship. The judges, who had moments ago been scribbling notes and whispering about technicalities, now leaned back in their seats, watching quietly. They exchanged glances, their eyes wide and filled with a mixture of astonishment and respect. They had judged hundreds of contestants, seen countless performances, but they had never witnessed such humility, such generosity, in anyone, let alone a child. One judge whispered to another, almost inaudibly, This is beyond talent. This is heart." Audience members were wiping tears from their eyes. Some parents hugged their children tightly, moved by the lesson of compassion being displayed right before them. The murmurs of admiration grew louder, spreading through the room like a wave. People were not just impressed by her singing anymore. They were captivated by her spirit, by her capacity to give even when she herself had so little. As the girl finished distributing the food, she stepped back, a shy but genuine smile lighting up her face. Her cheeks were flushed, partly from the performance, partly from the overwhelming emotion of the moment. She looked out at the crowd, and in that instant, everyone understood something profound. Greatness is not measured solely by skill or fame, but by the ability to give selflessly, even when life has given you very little. The volunteers began applauding quietly. Then the audience joined in, clapping and cheering not just for the performance, but for the heart of the girl who had turned a simple act of sharing into a powerful lesson. In that room, for a brief, unforgettable moment, a little street girl had transformed not just her own life, but the hearts of everyone who had witnessed her courage, her talent, and her remarkable generosity. One of the judges, a well-known music producer whose reputation spanned across the country, rose from his seat and slowly walked toward the stage. The audience fell into an anticipatory hush. Everyone could feel that something extraordinary was about to unfold. His eyes, usually critical and trained to detect talent with precision, were now wide with amazement, reflecting the raw emotion that had just swept through the auditorium. He knelt down carefully to meet the little girl at her level. She looked up at him, her eyes still glistening from the performance, still shining with the energy of courage and determination that had carried her through the song. He smiled gently and said, "Do you know what just happened? You didn't just perform. You sang your way into the hearts of hundreds of people tonight. And I want to help you." The girl blinked several times, confusion crossing her face. Her small voice trembled as she whispered, "Help me." She had spent her whole life surviving, scraping together tiny meals, and dreaming quietly to herself. The idea that someone so famous, someone with the power to change her life, was actually offering help was almost too much for her to process. "Yes," the producer said, his tone firm yet kind. "I want to give you proper training, professional guidance, and the chance to record your music. Your voice, it deserves to reach the world. You're not just a street girl. You're a star waiting to shine. And I will make sure people hear you." The audience erupted. Applause and cheers filled the auditorium, louder than anything they'd given before. Parents hugged their children tightly, inspired not just by the performance, but by the extraordinary opportunity that had appeared before this little girl. Children stared with wide eyes, imagining the possibilities in their own lives. People who had been cynical moments ago now felt hope, as if witnessing this small, fragile child receive recognition had reminded them of the goodness and potential that still existed in the world. The little girl's lips trembled, and her hands clutched the edge of her notebook so tightly that her knuckles turned white. Tears streamed down her cheeks, unrestrained, as the weight of the moment began to sink in. For the first time in her life, she realized that the world could offer something beyond hunger, neglect, and struggle. Someone had seen her not for the ragged clothes she wore, not for the hardships she had endured, but for the talent and courage that lived within her. I never imagined, she whispered, her voice breaking with emotion. I never imagined this could happen to me. The music producer reached out and placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. You've earned this. Talent like yours doesn't wait, and neither should we. This is your chance to show the world who you truly are. Audience members rose to their feet, clapping and cheering, some even standing in awe, unable to stop their applause. Many were crying, moved not just by her talent, but by the story of perseverance and resilience that had led to this moment. Cameras flashed as reporters captured the scene, knowing they were witnessing something extraordinary. A child transforming from a street singer asking for food into a potential star whose voice could inspire millions. Volunteers who had brought her food just minutes earlier now watched with pride, realizing that the plate of food had been a small gesture compared to the life-changing opportunity that had just been offered. The little girl, still wiping away tears, looked around the room and felt a warmth unlike anything she had ever known. Respect, admiration, and hope radiating from every corner. As she stood there, absorbing the cheers, the smiles, and the validation, something inside her shifted. The fear and uncertainty that had always been a part of her life began to dissolve, replaced by a new determination. She knew that this was not just a chance to sing professionally. It was a chance to transform her entire life, to inspire others, and to prove that courage and talent could overcome even the harshest circumstances. In that moment, the auditorium wasn't just filled with applause. It was filled with possibility, with hope, and with the quiet understanding that sometimes a single voice, brave, honest, and full of heart, could change everything. Months had passed since that unforgettable day, and the little street girl had transformed in ways no one could have imagined. She returned to the same stage, but this time, it was not as a timid contestant holding a cracked notebook and a fragile hope. She walked onto the stage with poise and grace, her every step confident and deliberate. She wore a beautiful dress that shimmered under the bright stage lights, and her hair was neatly styled, framing a face that now radiated determination and joy. The girl who had once worried about a single plate of food now stood as a young performer ready to claim the life she had earned. The audience recognized her immediately, and a wave of excitement swept through the room. Cameras flashed, fans cheered, and whispers of anticipation filled every corner. People who had seen her humble beginnings now watched in awe as she stepped up to the microphone. There was an energy in the auditorium that was electric, almost palpable, the kind that only arises when someone has overcome impossible odds and stand triumphantly before the world. She began to sing, and the sound that poured out of her was breathtaking. Her voice had matured, becoming stronger, richer, and more controlled, yet it still carried that raw, emotional quality that had once moved hearts so profoundly. Each note resonated with the struggles she had endured, the nights she had spent hungry and alone, and the unwavering hope that had never left her side. Her song was no longer just about survival. It was about triumph, dreams fulfilled, and the transformative power of perseverance. Every word, every note, every pause spoke volumes, capturing the audience completely. The crowd erupted, cheering louder than anyone could have anticipated. People stood, clapping, some wiping away tears, as they were reminded of the journey that had led to this extraordinary moment. Parents hugged their children tightly, inspired not only by her talent, but also by the lessons she embodied, that courage, hard work, and generosity could change lives. Reporters and cameras captured every angle, recognizing that they were witnessing the remarkable story of a girl who had once asked for a simple plate of food and had now become a symbol of hope for millions. Offstage, her life had changed in more ways than just fame. She never forgot where she came from. The hardships of the streets had instilled in her a deep empathy, a desire to help those who were still struggling. She started a program to support children living in poverty, providing meals, music lessons, and mentorship. She understood firsthand the power of opportunity and wanted to give others the same chance she had been given. Her work offstage became as important to her as the applause she received on it. Her story spread far and wide. It wasn't just about a girl with a beautiful voice. It was about courage, generosity, and the importance of holding onto your dreams even when the world seems indifferent. Every performance reminded people of the night when a tiny, barefoot girl, who had nothing but her voice and her hope, asked a simple but profound question. "If I sing well, will you give me a plate of food?" That question had changed her life forever, and now it inspired countless others to believe in the power of their own potential. Every time she sang, audiences felt her journey, the pain, the hope, and the triumph, as if they were living it alongside her. Children who had once felt hopeless saw her as proof that dreams could come true. Adults who had grown weary of struggle felt renewed belief in kindness, opportunity, and human spirit. And she, the girl who had once feared she was invisible, now used her voice not just for music, but for change. Her life was a living testament that no dream is too small, no act of courage too insignificant, and that even the humblest beginnings can lead to extraordinary endings. And so, every time she stood on that stage, letting her voice soar into the hearts of the audience, people remembered the defining moment that had started it all. The moment a tiny girl, barefoot and hungry, had dared to ask the world for a simple plate of food, and in doing so, had shown everyone that dreams, courage, and kindness could indeed change everything. If you found this story inspiring, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you never miss another powerful video. Thanks for watching.